If you're East Asian, Chinese, Taiwanese, Korean, you have, in my opinion, more advantages than someone who's Filipino. Like my friend who was Filipino told me, oh, we're the black people of Asians.
Yeah.
That's why they love basketball.
Man, they love basketball. I think they love basketball more than black people.
I respect them.
I absolutely.
I respect them. You know what I mean? There's just something really cool about like someone just trying regardless. You know, it's kind of like David and Goliath, except everyone's just David. It's it's like a 5-on-5 Davids just going at each other.
You want to shoot some Davids?
But shout out to the Filipinos. You know what I mean? Basketball's a great sport.
Say it properly. Filipinos.
I care about being accepted by white America.
Being accepted in white culture means I guess I'm not like discriminated in a heavy way, and I think there is a level of comfort that I take in that. Not that doesn't mean I'm like going against like any other culture, but there is a comfort level, and I think it's a privilege that I have that I'm able to be looked that way even though I'm a minority.
Yeah, I think it's a sad reality that I have to sit here literally only because I think currently white America runs our society.
I mean, if you want to work in any kind of professional settings, I think there is some element of care that you have to have for this.
Well, yeah, definitely. I cannot be here and be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
That's a lie. That's a blatant lie. If you code switch, you care to some degree. Not because if you want to be accepted, it's either you want to be accepted because not because you want to please them or whatnot, but it's for your livelihood. You want to have a job, you want to be able to, so yeah, if you code switch, you care.
Code switching is just changing the way that you talk.
According to what's the environment and who in the situation. So if you don't speak the same way to your friends that you speak at work, you're code switching. That's it.
Is that being accepted by white society, or is that just being accepted by a professional environment? I'm sure even in a black country.
I think one goes with the other. The standard is based on and was created by.
I guess you could say it was created by, but if I live in a black society, there's still a certain behavior that I have to show at work that I can't show in my day-to-day life.
Definitely. Of course, I'm talking about an American setting. If you are code switching and you live in, let's say, for example, if you are in a place where it's predominantly black people, your code switching is not for the same reason. You're going to be code switching, but it's not necessarily for the same reason. But if we're talking about white America right there and then, I think it could be a little bit of both.
And in order for me to benefit myself, my family, I need to align with that sometimes. It actually gives me great anxiety when I step into a situation and I know I'm the only POC, because then suddenly I am.
Why more and more I have a problem with the word POC?
It's like you were fine with black man. They just gave you something else.
I just got acquainted with black man.
It's kind of like when they gave you cisgendered, heteronormative, cishet.
Yeah, they try to slur me with cishet.
Remember Cachette?
Yeah. They try to slur me with cishet, and I'm like, okay, now you just go with that words, but it's okay, but it doesn't affect me that way, but it's okay, but I'm a POC. Like, they don't want to say person of color and colored. You can't say colored because that's bad, but person of color, that's good. The next generation's gonna pop out, and then they're gonna have a problem with person of color. And I don't know.
A lot of the times when I'm in a group setting when everybody's Asian, especially Asian people who only have Asian friends.
100%. I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
I get this weird feeling that now you're gonna label me as the white one. And I hate that because I'm not white. Yeah. It's just a really weird identity crisis.
What you described was pretty much
your experience.
My high school. I was the guy that was, he's not black enough. I've been said that. Some of the people we know, they like, Prototype. He was like, yo, yeah, them people, they thought you were white. Yeah. They thought, yeah. It was like, nah, man, he chill, you're a cool dude and everything and stuff. But
you were just adapting.
Pretty much.
But they saw you were adapting a little bit too much.
Exactly. So I was white. I was white to them.
Would you say that you don't want to disappoint your people?
Okay, try to call the documentary. I ain't mad at you though.
What document? Are you talking about Eric. The documentary that we released last week that you can view on YouTube for free, that you should probably click a link to because it's going to be the pinned comment down there. That one. I'll just play.
You're never going to be, and I understand, but you're never going to be accepted. That's how they've set this country up. And like, as a black woman, I gave up on that a long time ago because I know I'll never be accepted.
Oddly enough, a lot of practices rooted within the black community come from the desire to be accepted by the dominant society and their beauty standards. Perming hair, doing all this stuff. You know, a lot of that's ingrained from like generational messaging and imagery that we've internalized, and therefore when we want to be accepted or we want to seen as professional, we cater to these fashion looks. So I think it's interesting that she's like, why would you say that? It's like, for most black people, that's just not a reality. If you live in this context, in this North American context, you do certain things to be accepted. Whether you are realizing it or not, most people are. Mm-hmm. I can speak to this from like an immigrant standpoint, but like I find when immigrants come here, oftentimes, at least from my country specifically, like we're always taught to like be quiet or to make ourselves smaller as to not draw attention to ourselves, so that we don't like make the locals, if you will, uncomfortable. That's like something my parents imbued in me since I was young. And so even when I grew up old, like I felt uncomfortable raising my voice in public or around anybody because I thought I was being a nuisance. But that's just that messaging and that programming of like wanting to be accepted and to not cause problems. So I think it's all ingrained into us in ways we don't even sometimes realize.
I grew up in a conservative white area. It was such a big difference where I was like, you know what, I'm going to be the blackest person ever. So, so for me, it was one of those things of I had to learn how to be more respectful to their culture because I felt like they were trampling on mine so much. I went the opposite, almost militant black.
I have stereotyped the other side.
I'll be honest.
I ain't mad at it.
I ain't mad at it either. I'm gonna be honest. MSG's kind of lit though. You know what I mean?
So, I think Asian people are cool personally, right? Like I'll try to like hang with them, because I love learning culture. So I'll try to like go and have conversations or whatever. And sometimes it's just been like this more like standoffish, like this is our group, and you know we have our own like little thing going on. And so I feel like for me, I was like, what's up with that, right?
I grew up in a predominantly East Asian neighborhood, Arcadia, in San Gabriel Valley. But there's still this group of like old white families there. They would say things, and I would, back in middle school, like I would kind of repeat it, not really understanding, like, oh, Asians are bad drivers. I'd be like, oh yeah, Asians are bad drivers. And then I'm like, no, that's really, would I feel comfortable about somebody saying something like that about black people? Like, no, I wouldn't. So I kind of had to like correct myself.
So what you're saying is that black people can be racist? Interesting.
No.
They can be prejudiced.
Yes,
that was prejudice. You guys live in Canada. Well, she lives in America, she feels similarly. So you're gonna have to deal with the argument at some point. Get with it.
My parents didn't hang out with anybody else than themselves because it's that immigrant mentality. You kind of stick with each other to bring each other up because you feel as if you're other. You want to succeed in America. So if you've got a friend who is a mechanic, you need your car fixed, you're gonna go to that guy because you speak the same language, and so you're around the same kind of people.
Actually, growing up, I thought my brother was black. Because he had a lot of black friends. All I saw was his black friends, is all he hung out with. So I would go to school and say, hey, I have a black brother. You know.
I thought you was about to say, so I would go to school and I'd be like, hey, nigga.
Trying to make friends. Like I was so adamant, and then like
That's
my mom.
An interesting way to make friends.
I think some of my assumptions about Asian Americans are that they aren't necessarily fond of black people, or if they're not, they don't have any feeling one way or the other. They just prefer to be with their own. Not that I fault them, because that's how a lot of different races are.
I'm gonna be honest with you. That's most immigrants. Not very fond of black people.
That's everywhere.
Want to stick with their own.
Yeah, that's everybody.
Latinos are the same, right? If you go to Asia, yep, they do. And you know what? Even a lot of young Asian people say like they know their parents are that way. But it's like, how are you going to tell someone who's lived through World War II or who's like been through 50 years of life they need to change? Like, it's very difficult to have people change that kind of mentality. Even my family.
Yeah.
There's comments like that.
Yeah, I see how your mom looked at me when I stepped in.
No, not Haitians. No. She got different groups though. Everyone got their group. They're like, nah, not that one, not them people. You know, I realize it's very tribalistic in that sense. So I don't know if this is necessarily like to what she was saying, regards like she feels like Asians don't. It's like most groups like that. Brown folks, like it's pretty common for all cultures.
No, I saw your mom actually look at me. Hi, Mom. This is Eric, your friend. No, he's not my friend. Good. Just kidding. She didn't even talk to me.
Yeah, that's true. She did.
She was cooking. I'm mad at her.
Yeah, she made you food.
Yo,
that's what really matters.
That food was delicious.
That's it.
ABC.
Who's eating?
Delicious.
Yeah, the Haitian guy is like, okay, I'm making. That's it. We trying to talk?
Yo,
eat the food. Now you know how I feel about you.
Exactly.
Does it taste good? I can't.
Yeah, I can't. I didn't have that. I didn't ask for a hug or nothing. I was like, ooh.
What, you think my mom told me she loved me as a kid?
No,
she just gave me a good lunch.
She made you food.
Yo, listen.
It's like when they beat you, and that's how they say sorry. You won't eat?
Listen, if I went to school and my banana wasn't black, I'm like, Mom loves me today. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is.
I face more racism from the opposite side than I do from white people.
I think it's true for me, but I think I'm a special case given the fact that the industry I work in. I work in the tech industry. I face a lot of just rude comments, ignorant comments, and just unnecessary things that are said to me by Asian people. I've had a few Asian coworkers that told me that the way that I talk is inappropriate, that my tone and my voice is inappropriate for the workplace, and I need to change that. And I get that more from my Asian coworkers and Asian managers than I do my white coworkers.
So the only reason why I didn't come up and agree is because I have experienced a lot of from Asians just because I lived in an Asian neighborhood, but I really think that's it. I've lived in a white neighborhood, predominantly white neighborhood. I've lived in a predominantly East Asian neighborhood. And personally, I prefer living in a predominantly East Asian neighborhood because in my experience, they leave us alone.
The amount of time I've walked through my neighborhood and there's an old Asian man like walking towards me and I nod my head, the old Asian man just stares at me and then looks away without nodding. Like, you want to talk about non-confrontation? They don't even acknowledge your existence at times. I mean, are you going to face more racism from white people? I mean, probably. There's just more white people to potentially face it from, you know? It's just a matter of like the environment that you're in. The same way the girl who'd face more racism from Asian people when she lived in an Asian neighborhood. Well, if you live in a white country, you're most likely going to face more white racism, right? Like, that's kind of a natural. I don't think it's anything endemic of necessarily white people per se. Because trust me, if you go live in other foreign countries where there's like a Latin country or an Asian country, like you may face a lot of that even more being in those environments than you would in like North America per se.
It's hard for me to hear these things because as somebody who's also worked in, I've worked at a tech company before and I'm always a manager in position, and to have somebody talk to someone like that, I don't think our community as a whole, this is not the representation, I don't think they would give the same respect that you guys are giving. And it's not right. It's not right. The fact that you can do that and give us the benefit of the doubt is so kind. It's I don't think we deserve it. And I overall think that Asian communities are very racist.
When you see shit like that, and there's nothing you could do about it, right? Like you probably see his parents, his grandparents, comments. And there's some, like, you can't fight everybody at some point. You can't be like argue at everybody at every dinner table, You can, but I mean, you're just not going to even invite at the cookout at some point. But that's the thing. You see it around you see it around you, and you try to do better. And then, there's other people that remind you that, no, it is happening on both sides. It came into a country that wasn't theirs, and then you're facing that makes me think of Haiti. When the Syrians that went there and when they first arrived, they faced racism racism from the black people. When the Syrians worked and they worked and they worked and they had all the companies, the textile companies and stuff like that, and they had the power, they turned around and then they're doing the same thing to the people. You know what I mean? So it's like I see Haiti when I hear stuff like that.
I think it just speaks to the tribalistic nature of human beings. They just look at other tribes and they just find reasons to dislike them because it's just easier to minimize somebody or to reduce them than to accept the nuance of like another group. And when you live as a second generation immigrant where you're born in the country but your parents are from somewhere else, well, you go to school with people from all different cultures. So you know that it goes a little bit deeper than that. But then you hear your parents make such blanket statements and you're like, I love these people, but these people say such hateful things, yet I still love them and they're still my parents and my family. So like, how do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah.
That becomes a difficult conversation because odds are you're not going to change their minds. So what, am I supposed to stop talking to my parents because they don't, I've dated girls, wonderful human beings. Their parents thought they would rather like their daughters self-delete than date me. That's a crazy thing to... Does it bother me? Not anymore, because I've just accepted the way the world is. It just is what it is. Like if I'm dating a girl and she's from a different, not even just different race, but if she's like from a different, like African, like tell your parents where I'm from, because I ain't even trying to deal with no nonsense. I'm already ready, right? So I've come to accept that, and I understand why it would be difficult for someone to hear what people like their parents might be saying to the people across from him. That's the thing that's just, I think, is going to get better with time. But I don't know what that future looks like either. I don't know what it's going to look like when our parents' generation's gone and then we're here. I don't see us having the same kind of mindset that they had, but I also don't know if that's necessarily a much better future.
I think we're going to have the same mindset, but for different things. That's it. History repeats itself. It's going to be diff, but not so diff.
Not only racist against just, there are a lot of inner racism. There's a lot of South and East racism that's prevalent. There's clear black, white, there's racism a lot.
Asian Americans are more advantaged than Black Americans.
All right, can we skip this portion?
Why?
I just get so bored of this kind of conversation because it's like, how do you quantify a group's advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah.
What are you looking at it as? How are you tabulating this? It's a very subjective, it's not something that you can concretely say accurately. So for me, whenever I hear this, it's just like, well, I feel like this and I feel like that. And well, you guys more advanced. And I'm just like, oh, what it feels like is like everyone's fighting for the crumbs when there's a giant piece of loaf of bread on the plate.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was about to say it turns into a misery competition.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like. But I'm also open to, maybe I'm gonna learn something differently. Maybe I'm gonna learn something different, or people are gonna bring up something. I understand the irrelevancy of this question because it's more than that.
I don't know. I've repeated this so many times, but I'm just like, bruv, at the end of the day, the biggest difference you're gonna see between people is gonna be finance. That's it. You're a rich black person, you're evading taxes all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? You're a rich Asian person, like, you don't see eye to eye with really poor Asian people. It's just a different lived experience. And I think if you talk about what's affecting you, what's really, putting laws in place, it's not the local Ku Klux Klan member across the street. It's going to be the rich people who are protecting their own interests and making sure you're getting shafted. So whenever I hear this discussion, I'm like, you guys are fighting over the crumbs. And to me, it just seems kind of pointless.
I kind of think Asian American privilege is white privilege. I think a lot of my success and opportunities that I got was purely because of how people judged my skin color and ethnicity. They thought I was smart. They thought I spoke eloquently. They thought I fit a minority profile into their culture, whatever it may be. But I've never had a negative stereotype, which means I have an inherent advantage, which is the whole principle of white privilege, right? So I think I'd be very disingenuous in saying that I didn't get a lot of my successes or opportunities just because I'm Asian.
I mean, there's plenty of negative stereotypes. Do they affect you as negatively in the workplace? Depends on what workplace, but for the most part, in terms of professional backgrounds, yeah, I would agree that you're probably advantaged in that regards in terms of how you're perceived. What are your thoughts about the relationship between black folks and Asians in the West?
Here it's weird. It's super weird. It's a spectrum. It's either they down with us and we roll and we together and everything and stuff and all about it, or they don't at all. Like, there's some spheres where, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Outside of dance?
Outside of dance. If I talk about in the music industry here, the DJs, either they're with us or they just do their own thing on their side.
But you're still talking about people in the art sphere. If you're in the art sphere, I feel like the art's a different thing.
Yeah.
To me, like, I wouldn't even count that.
The arts bring people together.
Yeah. To me, it's a different thing. I wouldn't even like count that. But if you're talking about like what the experience is like, yeah, it's like people are tribalistic. They stay with their groups. The South Asians stay with themselves. The East Asians, do the same thing. And it's something I've come to accept. Do I think you guys can coexist peacefully? Sure. I think there's a lot of animosity between the groups. It's also tough when you're poor and you live across other minorities who are poor and you inflict harm on those around you within your communities who may be Asian or black. It kind of fuels those like cycles of resentment. Because at the end of the day, crime is a matter of proximity. So when you go rob a corner store, it's going to be the Asian guy because the Asian guy built this corner store in the hood. You know what I'm saying?
You're going to rob the store in the corner.
Right.
Proximity.
In that same token, when you make those kind of comments or anything like that, it's going to be people who are near you. So I don't have any kind of easy solutions to all this or, really great talking points. For me, I've just kind of accepted the way the relationship functions. I've learned to accept that there's going to be a barrier. And it's a self-imposed one at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. Is it like that for every group?
Yeah. Every group's like that. A lot of people who do the arts identify more with the arts at some point than they do with their own cultural heritage. True. So that's why it's just a different thing.
True. Yeah, you're right. It's crazy to go to Russia and have people twerk there, and they identify with twerking, but they have hella prejudice against black people.
Yep. I think at the end of the day, people, especially when you live in a country where you don't feel like you're part of the majority, you're going to kick it. You're going to at some point start to spend time with people who either look like you speak the same language or have some of the same like cultural upbringings. It's just you feel more at ease. And I think as a result of that, maybe this is just the reality of multiculturalism. When you bring all these old cultures together on the same plot of land and you say, all right, guys, figure it out. Make your teams. Well, they're like, well, I came here with the Chinese people, so... And then all the Davids get together, and they're like, yo, Philippines, let's go, right? It's just...
You call them Davids.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah. But it's true. I just think these kinds of cycles are kind of inevitable.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be like negative or anything like that. I just think it's going to be that way. But I don't think it has to be as hostile, me personally.
That's the thing. Getting together is one thing. The hostility is another thing.
I guess we have nothing else insightful to say. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you guys think.
Mira como goza, morena.